first 5 videos discussing Syria, more specifically the civil war in Syria that started with the Arab Spring in 2011, continues to this day for 9 years. My major thesis is that much of the moderate opposition is just a rhetorical cover for Sunni militants, Sunni jihadists of various stripes, being used as inputs to agents rather to overthrow Hafez al-Assad, the current president, who's been in power since his father died in the summer of 2000. In this video, I would like to just discuss briefly Turkey and its president, Recep Erdogan. That's a critical aspect of the war, is Turkey's involvement. I don't think it can be ignored. Turkey's president, Recep Erdogan, has consistently assisted those seeking to overthrow Assad. In other words, he has supported various forms of the Sunni oppositions operating there under various media-coined names, such as the Free Syrian Army, al-Nusra, ISIS, al-Qaeda. Yet the U.S. seems unconcerned about Erdogan's actions taken at the Sunni's terrorist behest. In this case, we can easily see Erdogan has waged war against Syria, and in so doing assisted the very kind of terrorists the U.S. has spent trillions, much of which is unaccounted for, trying to combat those very elements, very organizations. And I guess you could say, a lot of people say terrorism is a tactic, so whatever term you want to use to describe it, many of the elements that are opposing Assad are people that the U.S. has been claiming since 9/11 to want to fight and prevent from spreading further and inflicting more harm upon Americans. As if the war in Syria wasn't already filled with layers of nuances that defies expressing a pithy summary of the essence of this 9-year war. One nuanced layer is the motivation of Erdogan, which I believe is too easily dismissed with caricatures. As truthful and grounded in some realities they might be, I still think, given the broader facts and the broader narrative, many of the easy, low-hanging fruit explanations of Erdogan are often just caricatures. They become caricatures. Erdogan's actions in Syria from 2011 to the present invite our accepting the caricatures tagged to his image, but we should take a closer look and evaluate another factor motivating Erdogan's obstinate, continuing military action in and against Syria. Erdogan can easily claim his military actions in Syria are necessary to stop Kurdish jeopardizing Turkey's territorial integrity and stability. The Kurdish are often identified as Turkey's terrorist problem, enabling Erdogan to justify military actions as fighting terrorism. Other voices identify Erdogan's military actions in Syria as an integral component of his megalomaniacal efforts to reestablish Turkey to the glory of an Ottoman Empire. Those two motivating factors cited above show Erdogan acting on his own volition, pursuing objectives for the best interest of Turkey. His actions may have resulted from another motivating factor, however, which is that Turkey's involvement in Syria serves the interest of the U.S. Within the vein of Syria's downfall occurring at the behest of the U.S., its government's declassified documents revealed their supporting regime change in Syria beginning in 1983, at least. Hence, the U.S. conceived of a regime change plan in Syria and placed it on the shelf. 28 years later, this plan was taken off the shelf and triggered into action when the zeitgeist of the Arab Spring appeared to render Syria vulnerable to such regime change. Now, the CIA strategy for regime change in Syria included Israel, Iraq, and Turkey as agents of destabilization. A declassified CIA memo, and I'm including a link to that document here at the bottom, dated September 14th, 1983, argues that all three aforementioned nations, militarily engaging Syria, will force Hafez al-Assad, Bashir's father, president at the time, to change his policies, which in this case is his reopening a gas pipeline that ran over the Iraq-Syria border. Quote, The U.S. should consider sharply escalating the pressures against Hafez al-Assad through covertly orchestrating simultaneously military threats against Syria from 3 border states hostile to Syria: Iraq, Israel, and Turkey, end quote. That's taken directly from the CIA memo dated September 14, 1983. The CIA memo, prepared by former agent Graham Fuller, summarizes why it believes the 3 nations cited above should take military action against Syria beginning in 1983. Some of the details have changed slightly, while other facts on the ground have changed significantly, but the U.S. objective has remained the same: use military force of some kind to force Assad, take your pick, the father or the son, which depending on the timing, trying to force that regime to make changes that they deemed agreeable to the U.S. or to topple the regime entirely. The coup in Turkey in 2015 appeared to be a secular/Kemalist leaning military, reasserting its control over Turkish legal and political institutions to prevent Erdogan's promoting a resurgence of Islam in such institutions. When I say Kemalist, that's just after Mustafa Kemal, who was a part of a Western/reformer, more modernist leader in Turkey, who came in the wake of the vacuum left by the Ottoman Empire crashing after World War I. He was trying to make it into a more modern democratic state, more or less resembling along the Western designs, more or less. At least that's the general description often attributed to him, particularly in history books. So our uncovering an explicit and linear narrative wherein the details of this coup in 2015 fit firmly into an easily comprehensible pattern is difficult, if not impossible. But I do believe it is worth noting that Zbigniew Brzezinski, a National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter, as well as a member of the U.S. foreign policy establishment for decades, who passed away in 2017, he did express his critical view that the U.S. supported this coup attempt. Quote, Brzezinski said, quote, "The U.S. backing of the attempted coup against the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was a grave mistake that could deliver a major blow to the U.S. reputation," end quote. Brzezinski commented further, quote, "Turkey was on the verge of reconsidering its foreign policy after failure in Syria during the last 5 years, and the U.S. miscalculation in supporting the coup and hosting its leader, Fethullah Gulen, now in CIA-arranged exile in Pennsylvania, was so serious that it was no longer possible to put the blame on once U.S. ally Turkey if it turns its back on the U.S. and rethinks its policies," end quote.
Thank you for watching my video, and my name is Romelet of Fil-Am World Magazine. I will see you again on my next videos, so please don't forget to hit subscribe. Okay? So you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again.